Hello everybody! Welcome back to the afternoon. I hope you had some good hands-on time in those practical sessions. I popped my head in and there was so many beautiful, calm things. For me personally, having had quite a frantic morning, it was really nice to just see the calm that was rippling around the building in each of those spaces, and heavy discussions too, which was ace. We're going to have some more heavy discussions now. So we've got a fantastic panel of experts around this round table, and just to give you an idea of what the format of this is going to be, first of all, each of our panel are going to introduce themselves, and I'm going to throw 3 questions at them, one at a time. We're going to hear about a minute's worth of answers. We'll try to keep to about a minute's worth of answers from each member of the panel. We'll have about 5 minutes of discussion, and after we've gone through those 3 questions, then we'll throw it open and we'll have our roaming mics to come out to you for some questions, some comments as we go along. All sound good?
Sounds great.
Yeah? Ace. All right, so I would like to start with you, Marianne, if you wouldn't mind. Please grab a mic and introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, my name is Marianne Scarhill-Pape and I am the Learning and Outreach Manager here at Attenborough Arts Centre. I'm also the Creative Medicine Arts Associate for the Centre for Empathic Healthcare across the road, and I'm an artist and an Atelierista, and I'm really passionate about the arts being open and available to everybody. Okay?
Wonderful.
There you go. Clap.
Hi everyone, my name's Min Sangera. I am Deputy Head Teacher at Netherhall School. Netherhall's a school for pupils with special educational needs, right from age 4 all the way up to 19. I'm also a specialist leader in education, so I do quite a lot of outreach work, going into mainstream schools, helping improve provision for SEND. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Abby Steady. I'm Deputy Head at Ashmount School, which is a similar designation to Netherhall, but in the county, 4 to 19, severe and profound learning difficulties. Similarly, I'm a Senior Lead for Education out into a lot of other mainstream schools. I'm Strategic Lead for the Arts at Ashmount. I'm a mum of 8 children, and I'm passionate about children and passionate about the arts.
Hello, I'm Simon Taylor. I currently work as a senior lecturer at the University of Worcester. Started off my career as a freelance artist educator, trained as a potter, worked in special schools in Sussex, moved into adult education, community arts management, and then more recently museum and gallery education. So quite a varied career, but I'm very happy to be here and delighted that creativity is back on the agenda.
Hello, I'm Jo Stockdale from Well Within Reach. My background started in creative practice, but I got into creative education and became very interested in social and emotional learning and the role that has in children's education, capacity to learn and engage in education, and a person-centred approach, full stop. So I've kind of followed that lead of social and emotional learning, social and emotional competence, and trying to overcome the ever-growing and ever-present challenge of how do you measure person-centred growth, which is how I got to be involved in SENsory Atelier as the evaluator.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, panel. So yeah, and just to push, if you can, please do continue to add things to the Padlet, because we'll come back to that in a little bit. So our first question that we're going to ask of our panel is, what is learning in your context? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What could you contextualize learning to be in the spaces that you inhabit? Min, you happy if I throw to you first?
Thanks for that, Bob. So, learning in our context. Firstly, it's never ending. And I really liked what Dr. Penny Hay said. She described it as a forest that makes connections. And when I think about learning, I think about links, making connections, making links. You know, when we went to Reggio, we talked about the 100 languages. It's about understanding what those 100 languages are. what they look like for our children. It's never the same process for one next to the other. And then also, it's, you know, it goes beyond our children. Look at the learning that we're doing today. We're constantly making connections, constantly making links. It's that never-ending, beautiful process of, what's the word? Never-ending process of new knowledge. Yeah, it's retaining new knowledge and the creation of new knowledge. Yeah.
Thank you, Min.
Over and out.
Thank you, Min. Jo, I'm going to come to you next, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you. I think, well, most people, I'm sure, of the same opinion that certainly in mainstream education, learning has become confused with memory retrieval, just simply retaining bits of information and being able to rapidly retrieve it. I think my passion for what learning is you only have to watch a baby or a very small infant explore the world and you see how innate learning is. They want to know everything. They want to know the answer to everything. And it's not talked about enough that every baby is born with 86 billion brain cells in their head. You know, this idea that we've got that children need to be forced to learn is completely nonsense. So that's my kind of first thought of it, is that the essence of learning is not answering questions, which is what it's become, or knowing answers. It's being able to ask the questions and then find your own way of answering them. And as the parent of a 10-year-old, I'm alarmed by how quickly Google, and worse still, YouTube, is becoming the end point of, I know this is true because I saw it on YouTube. We're teaching our children to stop asking questions, that even at the age of 3 or 4 weeks old, when their little eyes are waking up to the world and going, who are you and what's that and where am I? They're already on that learning journey. So to follow on from that, I think authentic learning, the way we need to be embracing it, not just in SEN settings, but in all school and beyond, is what do I do once I've learned something? Because so often learning is, I know that now, tick, what's next? What do I need to learn now? Rather than, now I know that, or now I understand that, or now I believe that, or now my perception is that. Where do I take that belief or perception or piece of learning or knowledge, and what do I do with it now?
Thank you, Jo. Abby, could I throw to you? Is that okay?
Yeah, so what does learning look like at Ashmount? Well, hopefully we are innovative. We're constantly looking to raise the bar in what we do. We're always looking for exciting collaborations with different agencies, different artists, different people to just, I suppose, open the door on what can be possible for young people. We're not content with staying the same and doing what worked yesterday or what happened to, tick a box. We're willing to take risks and to put ourselves out there to follow maybe a different model than the standard education model, and to give account for that where that's needed. We're not too worried about people coming in and making judgments, especially one-word judgments. We're prepared to go with what we know works for young people. We're in the business of making our young people confident communicators, independent problem solvers, creatively empowered, emotionally and physically resilient, and included in society as far as young people are able. So that's our business, and that's what we do, and we use the curriculum as a vehicle to achieve those ends rather than flipping on its head and doing it the other way round. We're very much process over product, as you've heard several times today. I think there is a real value in what comes out of something that doesn't have a preset outcome. So there is always an outcome, because there's always something that happens. It's just whether the outcome drives what happens or whether what happens creates the outcome. So I think we're getting better as a school at observing, and multiple people looking through a lens together and saying, okay, so what can we learn, what can we take from it? And as was said previously, I hope that all of our staff, we've got 168 staff in school, And I hope that they're catching the vision and catching the journey as well and learning every day alongside our amazing young people.
Thank you, Abby. Marianne?
Oh, yeah. Hi. Learning at Attenborough is incredibly person-centred. We really believe in creativity as the language for learning. We have, obviously, contemporary exhibitions, which are all about culture and the lived experience that we're engaging with. And when I'm working with children in the gallery, you know, I want them to learn the language of the gallery. You know, the word, what does the word curator mean? What does the word artist mean? Who is an artist? Are we artists? Who is an artist? Anyone that makes art. Art is, it's a universal language that connects us to each other. It's non-verbal, it's spatial, it's time-based, it's collaborative. It connects us in ways that other subjects can't. It's pervasive, it's all around us. We wear it, we play with it, it's a way of communicating. And so I am really, really passionate here at Attenborough about devising programmes that remove systemic barriers to everyone being able to engage with that. Having a real trauma-informed approach, because we know that everybody, the centre is only as accessible as the next person that enters our building, however they enter. And there's a lot of work to be done to meet people where they are. So we're learning all the time. We're not the experts, but we want to hold the space for everyone to be an expert here, to show us what they know about the world from their point of view, and to hold that as a platform for other people to learn about other cultures, other ways of life, other ways of seeing the world, because we need that now more than ever, because it's when we start building walls and focusing on what we need rather than other people that conflict can emerge. And we know that there are so many people in the world now really, really struggling, you know, obviously I have to be quite impartial, but I feel very strongly that the arts should be for everybody, and it's our job, everyone in this room, to try and make that happen, especially for children who are unable to tell us verbally what they want, but they may tell us in a million other ways. So it's tuning in to those languages, which is so important and something that we've really learned from Reggio. So yes, we work with schools, we work with communities, we work with children, young people, we work with adults, we work with people from a whole range of backgrounds and starting points. And again, it's about holding that space, that environment for people to learn and engage with the stories and lives of others.
Thank you, Marianne. Simon?
Okay, so I have the privilege of working in a higher education institute. So our job really as staff is to encourage our learners to become independent learners and critical thinkers. But my argument would be that applies to any key stage, from early years, primary, secondary, right through to lifelong learning. So we try and encourage autonomy, self-motivation, clarity over the purpose. What are they learning and why? Why are we doing this? You know, questions like that. Coming from an arts background, I'm very passionate about having student-led creative modes of assessment. And going to Reggio, I was there at the same time as Bob and Marianne. We didn't plan it, but it was inspired me to really be much braver in pushing for these student-led creative modes of assessment. And you mentioned authentic learning. There's a lot of discussion about authentic modes of assessment within higher education, and this is even more pertinent in an age of generative AI, ChatGPT. You can't set an essay question because ChatGPT will give you an answer in seconds. What you can do is encourage the students to design their own assessments, their own learning outcomes. They're then self-motivated, they have autonomy over the process. So for me, the Reggio approach, creative approach, is key to that. And I've been using it with my undergraduates. So.
Thank you. Any follow-up on that? There's a bit of discussion. I kind of came to the, young people know what they want to learn about the world, and you know, it's not necessarily our job to tell them, it's just our job to kind of give them the tools to be able to find the ways of learning about the things that they want to learn about. Maybe you were going to...
Yeah, I think I was thinking about learning in general, but when I think specifically about Netherhall, the power of personalisation and meeting the child where they're at, I think that is it's paramount at Netherhall, but nothing happens without forming relationships first, relationships, trust, and then learning can happen successfully. So it's understanding how to form those relationships and that trust. Again, understanding what those 100 languages are. We refer to the 100 languages quite a bit when we talk about curriculum and approaches and strategies, just because the possibilities of those 100 languages is just endless. It's really about understanding the individual, which is so important within SEND. And I speak as a sibling of somebody with SEND as well. So my big brother has autism. So, you know, growing up with him, my understanding of what learning should look like, you know, does look like, will look like, has changed so much. So, yeah, meeting them where they're at. And I feel like I'm still learning about my brother, but I understand so much more of him now than I ever did before because of the learning that I've done through my career. So I think, you know, it's being open, but yeah, definitely built on relationships.
Thank you, Lynn. Anything further to add? Just responding to that kind of concept of building relationships and trust, and just, you know, it's chiming in my head with the things that we're still all experiencing, and particularly I think for, you know, young people in SEND settings of the hangover of the pandemic, of that still being a big thing in terms of the rebuilding of relationships and trust for young people, and kind of holding that in mind, I think in our expectations, our you know, understanding of where people are coming from. Lovely. Okay, I'm going to throw us into our next question, if that's okay. Okay, so our next question is, how can the arts help learning to happen? And I am going to come to Jo, first of all, for this, if that's okay. I like to keep you all on your toes.
I think a lot of that follows on from the discussions that we're already having. And it's very closely related to learning, but I think it's about the curiosity that it engages. And again, I think what children are learning, I'm generalising here, but what children are learning about what it means to be a learner is stunting a lot of the way they engage or might engage in the arts, in that the value of this isn't to do with how I experience it, but how good I am at it. And is this a good piece of art or isn't it? If you know, whether you're engaging as the audience or whether you're engaging as a kind of participant. So I think actually a meaningful art engagement process is about enabling children to... It's something to do with identity and kind of exploring and discovering something about themselves and what lights them up, and whether it's a process of playing, because again I think children are learning not to stop playing far too early, when actually play manifests itself differently at different ages, but we continue to play throughout our whole lives. So I think art is the vehicle, not necessarily the only one, that can re-engage children with the process of learning and developing and making meaning of the world and being curious and asking questions in a way that is unique to them, and it is irrelevant how that experience compares to other children's experience or perceptions of the world. Yeah, I could ramble on for a bit longer, but I think that's probably enough.
Thank you, Jo. Marianne?
Yes, thanks, Bob. I've been reading a lot about neuroaesthetics because obviously working in a gallery, I want to know the science behind why art does something to us, why we feel differently in an art gallery, why we respond kinesthetically to a sculpture, why we can visualise, why we get goosebumps from listening to music. You know, there is a real science to why art is needed by us as humans. It helps us to fail and make mistakes and to learn from that. By destroying something and rebuilding it, we're being creative. We are playing and learning about you know, all of the physical aspects of the world, but also how that feels inside our bodies. You know, that kind of, we talk a lot in the session this afternoon about the feedback that we get and the grammar of materials. All of these things can help us to learn. And how the arts can help learning to happen just by coming to a gallery. You know, being an audience to contemporary art helps you to form your own opinions. It helps you understand what you like, what you don't like. It helps you to connect with politics and identity. And you know, all children of all ages, even really little ones and really young ones, can do that. I think what we need to do as, you know, those kind of educators and artists responsible for that engagement is to remove our egos from that and to hold that space so they can show us what they know. So yeah, and I also wanted to shout out to you know, HEIST Participation Ladder. We want to get to self-actualization. We want to get to the top of that ladder where creativity is an authentic part of the process. We're not about doing tokenistic, you know, colouring in sheets, which I know there's a place for that, but get them to do the drawing and colour it in. This is about us really, really thinking, you know, what is the process happening here? What is it we're trying to do? And to remove our value judgments as much as possible.
Thank you. Abby, could we come to you?
Yep. How's the arts really powerful in education? I think obviously art is all about communication, and when we think about communication in its sort of strictest sense, you've got expressive communication and receptive communication. And in the English British education system, a lot of what we deliver to young people in packets is receptive. We are delivering from the front, we are delivering knowledge, we are delivering understanding, we are delivering expectations, we are delivering outcomes. And actually the arts just gives so much more room for the expressive element. I think it's much more natural because the very nature of art is that it's creative, and therefore it's coming out of nothing. It's being created by creative beings, which we all are. And so I think it lends itself very much more easily for all teachers, be those teachers that find the Reggio approach easy to embody and understand, teachers who are naturally relational, naturally play-based, or those teachers who are more systems-driven and more curriculum-driven. Actually, within the arts, it naturally evolves. You know, it's spontaneous, it's never the same twice, and so it's coming out of the innate creativity within the young people themselves, and we can scaffold that and guide it. Maybe that's my minute over. But actually it's coming from within our young people, and so yeah, that's why it's just so powerful. And I think the phrase was said earlier on that there's value in uncertainty, and that's what the arts is, full stop. You never know what that picture's going to look like till it finishes. You never know what that piece of drama is going to end up. From the 1448 festival, I could have never imagined that our piece would have ended up where it did. And young people are inherently creative, as we all are. Yeah, and so the arts is just a really good vehicle. It's also a really great vehicle to use to teach all those other subjects that are naturally receptively driven. So that's how come the award came in the science innovation stuff last year. So it isn't just for within the arts, this approach can be used across the board.
Thank you. Simon.
So yeah, all I can do really is add to what's already been said, but it's very much about, like Joe said, making meaning. That meaning can be socially constructed, so the co-construction of meaning I think happens through the arts. The arts help learning because they're embodied, they're experiential, it's active, it's not passive. I wrote a phrase that Marianne said it this morning, artists are catalysts for change. And I think the reason they are is because they're courageous often, they're quite brave, they'll push boundaries, they'll experiment, they'll take risks. You know, they're not afraid of ambiguity or getting the answer wrong, you know, being provocative even, you know, and that helps learning happen. All of that helps learning happen.
Thank you. Nick, should we pass this one?
So whilst we were in Reggio, very lucky to be in Reggio, there was this one story about a little girl that really stuck with me. And I think it was the pedagogista, like the lead pedagogista, that described what happened during her learning experience. So she was a little girl and they were in a learning session, they were outside, they were playing. And I think one of the teachers, I think it could have been the artist, I'm not sure who, she noticed that this little girl was just laying down on the grass and just looking, but she couldn't really figure out what she was looking at. And she was taking pictures of just what she was looking at, and then she just continued observing her. And this little girl just stayed there, lying on the grass, just looking. And then the teacher asked her and said, you know, what is it? What is it that you're looking at? And she said, oh, the leaves. Look at the leaves. They're dancing. And that really stuck with me. Oh, it's on. Is that my minute done? Oh no, it's here, it's back. Yeah, she said the leaves are dancing. That's how she described what she was seeing. And then from that, they made a dance. And it was the leaf dance. And they danced how the leaves were dancing. And this was during autumn, where the leaves were obviously leaving the trees. And then this teacher never looked at leaves, you know, the same again. And I think that's what the arts do. It doesn't just belong to just art painting or, you know, it's not colouring. It's so much more than that. It's so much more creativeness than that. Not very good with my words today, sorry. But yeah, so it lends itself to all areas. It shouldn't just be a standalone area. It shouldn't just be a standalone subject. We really need to look at how can we be so creative in all aspects of our learning. So yeah, that was just one story that really stuck with me from Reggio.
Thank you, Jane. I invite more discussion on that, but yeah, I think I always find it fascinating, and you know, I think everyone, no matter, even if you're an artist and you have your own specific art form, there are probably areas of the arts that you might be terrified of, that you might not want to dip your toes into, and it's this thing that, you know, something that is really at its base so simple can be so scary for people at times. But yeah, exactly that, of just really, if you boil it down, it's just a way of giving you an opportunity to see the world through somebody else's eyes or somebody else's ears or whatever it is, but you know, some other way of kind of experiencing being and what the human condition is and all of those kind of facets of life. And any other kind of comments on that?
I want to pick up on that and other conversations where we just started to explore, and you said about it makes learning happen. And I think we know that arts makes learning happen, but there's also a question to explore, I think, about what stops learning from happening, and it's always fear. Fear of failure, or fear of uncertainty, or fear, all of those kind of the fear that's attached to that. And I think that whole exploration around resilience and courage and total lack of motivation is another thing that stops learning happening. Which, you know, a lot of children aren't motivated to learn because it's got so many negative connotations attached to it. So I think just that having that the experience of being courageous and the space to be courageous in a safe space, in a safe way. And And that uncertainty is the kind of best friends with imagination, you know, because when you start, if a child is creating a piece of art or whatever, you know, what's in their head. So the same for any of us creating something. There's an image of some sort in your head about what it is you're trying to create. And that whole connection between what is not yet known or what is not yet materialised and how that translates into what does materialise. And that whole, I think we've lost the beauty of imagination, I think, somewhere in the way a lot of children learn. And I think that's the magic of the arts in learning, is refiring up imagination.
Just to pick up on that, it was touched on this morning, it's about trusting the process, trusting the children, not having set outcomes, trusting that open-ended learning is valid. And yeah, that, going back to what you said about pedagogy of relationships, that takes time, doesn't it? And it's hard to do. And it's destroyed very quickly, so unfortunately, by standardised testing or high-stakes testing, which seems to be how we're building our education systems at the moment.
I just wanted to shout out the 100 Languages poem by Loris Malaguzzi. If if you haven't read it, definitely look it up, because that is the only piece of curriculum from Reggio Children. It's one poem written by an educational philosopher. And it talks about the education system removing the 100 languages by trying to create homogenous beings who all think in the same way. And actually, when we lean into the 100 languages of children or anyone, that's when the greatest connections and learning can take place. So yeah, go check out 100 Languages by Loris Malaguzzi.
And picking up on that, one of the key messages in that poem is that we must not separate arts and sciences, imagination and fact and curiosity and research. That we separate subjects. We have options at GCSE. We funnel people into academic vocational routes. But that's a fundamental mistake that we're making very early on in education.
And that, back to making those links and connections, that's how learning happens. And when you separate everything, then that you almost build a barrier, a wall in between all of those areas. And how do we learn? Through making those connections. So hear to that.
Thank you all. Okay, my final question for you might be a bit contentious. What can mainstream education learn from SEND settings? And I'd like to throw over to Abby first, if that's okay.
Okay. What can they learn? First and foremost, start with the young person and where the young person's at. I think when I think about my children at home, quite often their view of what they're learning is, I haven't been told, or I haven't been shown, or I haven't got a fact file, or they didn't go through the questions with us, or they didn't tell us it was going to be a 10 marker, I don't know, it's just wrong. It's so back to front and upside down, and it's disempowering young people just by making them feel powerless unless they've been told what they need to know. And actually, from a special educational standpoint, our children very much will tell us what we need to know and will communicate to us what we need to know about them in order to make things happen and scaffold them and support them. And I think it's much of what's already been said today, which is that children are experts, certainly of their own experience, and they're already people, and they've already got lots to offer. And I think mainstream teachers could learn a lot from coming in and just sitting in a classroom where children won't conform and won't, necessarily engage with the amazing lesson that you've planned, that you've spent hours planning, because actually it's not working for them today, or actually, those leaves that are dancing outside the window are far more interesting than you. And just that idea that actually children are people, and children have got lots to bring and lots to offer. And I think special schools, we have to address things that way round, because our young people won't allow us to do it any other way. But where you have got rooms of 30 children prepared to sit at desks and, you know, take notes and learn facts and so on, it's very easy to fall into that simple model. So I think mainstream, yeah, they need to turn everything on its head, and it's hard because there's judgment out there, and there's people telling us how it needs to be. And I think in special education we've got a bit more license to be able to say, hang on a minute, that doesn't work for us. And I think the leaders in mainstream schools need to get braver and need to say, do you know what, actually this isn't working for us either. And be prepared to take some hard hits, but for the good of what needs to be happening in this country. Certainly not letting the arts get pushed to one side. Making time and space for young people to create and be and live and experience and be curious and inquire. Taking those detours, as the gentleman said earlier on, taking those detours off of the route that we're set on to spend some time doing what the young people are interested in. Yeah.
Thank you, Abby. Simon.
Picking up on that point, I think it's about the importance of paying attention to the child's interests. That idea of an emergent curriculum that comes out of the child's interests. Maybe it's bespoke, whatever phrase you want to use. And then that also relates to the Reggie idea of a pedagogy of listening. You're listening to the child. You're valuing their interests and what they're interested in learning about. And then they're going to be self-motivated because you're valuing the child's interests and what do they want to learn today. And then you build the curriculum around that. And you're right, it means turning the whole thing on its head.
Thank you, Simon. Marianne?
I think that mainstream can learn a heck of a lot, actually, from special schools and SEN settings, particularly learning how to meet children where they are. There's so much training around behaviour that challenges and preconceptions around how people should engage. And actually, if we give people time and space and listen to them in the many, many ways that they are telling us that they need something different, then that's going to be the way forward. There's an amazing book on slow pedagogy, which is all about time and space to learn at the interests and fascinations of the child. And when the curriculum is so jammed full, and you've got like half an hour a week to do anything creative, I mean, is it hardly surprising that there are so many issues and so many, it's affecting, mental health services, it's affecting, so many other areas of society, when actually, if we just leaned into what children really need, which is space and time to create and to process everything in the way that works best for them, then we wouldn't be having to double up on services and have such long waiting lists for everything. We've done some work with SENCos in mainstream settings. It's an area that we're really passionate about, actually, is looking at how SENsory Atelier could expand, how we can share some of this learning with mainstream settings, because we know that you might have one person in a whole high school who's responsible for the special educational needs of everybody in that school, which is an incredible amount of pressure to put on one person, or maybe two people. And that's before we even start talking about, the level of qualification required for that now, which has just been reduced from a 7 to a 3. So we want that quality of engagement. We want that quality of learning that we're seeing in special schools, because we know that it works. It's anyone that can write a funding application, anyone that can make the change. We need to do it, because I don't think we can wait. Children can't wait.
Thank you. Min?
I agree with everything that you said, Marianne, absolutely. Mainstream education can learn so much from special schools. There's many children in Leicester City who are waiting for a special school placement. Many, many children. be over 300, Marianne, yeah. So there's a lot of work to do, a lot of collaborative work, and I go back to relationships. I honestly think the special schools are working so much better together more recently, and I think SENsory Atelier has had a lot to do with that. You've almost been like the glue for us all, and I think that model needs to be used within mainstream as well. We've really got a lot of work to do with our mainstream schools, and the level of need within mainstream schools is just becoming more and more complex, which means, you know, there's a lot of work for all of us to do. We need to share our expertise, and I think what happens in mainstream, they tend to work in kind of solitary, like just by themselves, and kind of suffer alone. And maybe we need to reach out and say, you know, we're here and we can support. We're all passionate about SEND, but it shouldn't just be passionate about SEND within our own schools. We need to think about the wider impact that we're having on all children with SEND and all children, because those, you know, we're helping children with SEND within mainstream, but also it's having an impact on understanding of those neurotypical children as well. So yeah, I think we've got a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of work to be done, but it can be done. You know, I've been out there and I've done a lot of outreach work, and there has been impact, but imagine if all of us can use our expertise to do exactly that and more of that. So yeah.
Thank you, Min.
I have a lot to say on what mainstreams could learn about what is going wrong for children, full stop, but particularly in mainstream school, because it's increasingly becoming so militant and so non-child-centred. And it's not just that SEND could, you know, we could learn a lot from SEND. We could learn a lot from the children. What they're telling us, they don't want to go to school. You know, that they're in enormous long queues for mental health services, that their behaviour, you know, what we can learn from their behaviour. But there's so much to say on that. I'm going to give a slightly different perspective, in that all of us have, by and large, landed in this room doing what we do because we're passionate about it and we love doing it and we believe in it, but we're also good at it, i.e. we know where our strengths are. And I think something that mainstreams, a kind of a principle that they could adopt, or a way of thinking that they could adopt from SEND, is actually what many children in mainstream are learning incorrectly is, for example, I am no good at maths. That's what they're learning. They're not learning maths, they're learning that they're no good at it. Or I am learning that I am a slow reader because I am not as fast as the child who sits next to me. And the worst crime of all that our mainstream children are learning is, I hate learning. You ask the majority of children in mainstream school and they will tell you that they hate learning. And that is it's a crime against children. And so I think outside of the behaviour, the mental health issues, the EBSA, the school avoidance issues, the main lesson I think that mainstream could learn from SEND is to meet children where they are and teach them about their uniqueness and allow them to explore that kind of uniqueness, and take that person-centred approach, that you have to learn about that individual child and what works for them, and that their success or failure in life is not determined by how they compare to everyone else.
Thank you, Jo. I think just something I'm hearing quite a lot in this, in all three questions, is this idea of time and space, and it being given to the young people, but also to the staff working in education settings, and how much that has been squeezed until there is no time and space to reflect, to have those conversations. And I know that was something we were very fortunate with in the horror of the pandemic at the start of this phase of the SENsory Atelier programme, was that it bought us a little bit of time and space actually to just get together with teachers and to give that peer sort of conversation space that was so lacking. Any further kind of like thoughts on this concept of Marianne?
Yeah. I just wanted to expand on what you just said about one of the things that we've developed through SENsory Atelier is the joint practice development model, which was Abby's idea. we stole it from the surgeons, okay? Because if you're going to do brain surgery, you get all of the people in the room that are experts in brain surgery, and the knowledge and the development stays with that group of people, which is why we took a group of us to Italy so that the knowledge stayed with our group, which is why we're sharing it with you all now. We want the knowledge to grow, to not just stay in one person's, practice. This is a conversation that will continue forever, because as long as there are humans, as long as we're trying to make sense of what it's like to be a human being on this planet, and art being the way for us to express that, developing models where we can get together, share what the breakthroughs are, the best practice in a joint practice development model is definitely something we'd like to do a lot more of, so give us the funding.
I think what's great about that goes back to what someone said this morning about building a community where everyone is invested, and you're building a community through the SENsory Atelier, the joint practice development. You're not keeping the knowledge expertise to yourselves. I think that's what's so brilliant about the work you've done here and the people here, the ambassadors. It's about building that community.
It's also about the joint practice development thing. You can read up on it as JPD as opposed to CPD. So the idea that with CPD you go on a course, you learn some great things, you might even get a brilliant notebook and take some great notes. If you're really, really lucky, you might get back into school and have an opportunity to do a little staff meeting, feedback on it, and people might get really excited, but 9 times out of 10 nothing changes. Because life moves on and things move on, and that notebook ends up at the bottom of a drawer rather than the top. With joint practice development, the idea is that you come up with an idea, something you want to have a go at, and you get together a group of people that are ready to take that risk together. So I quite often use the example of separating conjoined twins, maybe in a way that's never been done before. You bring together the best people, the people that are most invested in the different aspects of that process, and together you will take a risk that you wouldn't have taken alone. And that's what this is all about. It's about getting people together that are passionate, that are skillful, that are expert in their own right, in so many different ways. And together we can take bigger risks than we'd ever be able to take alone.
Thank you, Abby.
Can I add to that the role of the professional artists that were here today, and that they can provide that passion, that spark. I've worked with some teachers and evaluating projects like the Meadow Arts project, and some of the teachers were very honest. They said after many years in the profession, they'd run out of steam, they felt they'd got no subject-specific CPD anymore, no one's investing in them as art teachers, and the professional artists coming in gave them that spark back, and they had a love of their subject again. So teachers can fall out of love with their subject. It happens. Yeah. So can we big up the role of the professional artists? Absolutely.
You've all been very well behaved and kept to time. I'd like to take the opportunity to throw us out to the floor to add in some more questions, comments. We can continue discussing the topics we've been on, or we can move a bit further up. Do you have something for us?
Yeah. I'm just,
Oh, we do have a mic we're going to bring to you.
I've got a very loud voice. I hate mics.
It's better for our video.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I've read a lot about the difference between surgeons and the way they operate and astronauts and the way they operate. And I just wondered if, because astronauts basically, they collaborate, of course, but they also pick apart things in actually quite a Reggio way afterwards, so that they never make the same mistakes. And yeah, I just was really fascinated, Abby, by that idea. Surgeons actually hide a lot of their mistakes and quite frequently make the same ones over and over again. So maybe we can be more astronaut and a little bit less surgeon. Just a thought. So it's not really a question. I was just thinking that was quite interesting because of the surgeon thing. We do put surgeons on a pedestal, but they make a lot of mistakes. mistakes. And mistakes are fine, we can make mistakes, but yeah, maybe ask.
It's good to learn from them and not repeat them though, right?
Yeah.
Any other thoughts, questions, comments?
You've probably thought about this already, but this is weird. Can the SENsory Atelier project twin mainstream schools with SEND schools to share learning? Has that happened? Does it happen?
It's actually something that we've written into the next phase of the bid, just to see, it's that kind of collegiate way of working, that kind of building a community of practice, a community of learning, so that the knowledge is shared between the group. And so we haven't quite developed that in practice yet, but we're really keen to. We've done so much work with SENCos, sort of alongside SENsory Atelier, and it's something that they're all telling us that they need more of. So, particularly with the crisis in education at the moment, anything that we can do to support the well-being of teachers alongside their, so they can look after other people is also really important. So yes, is the short answer to that.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that, we've been really blessed with the resource, the capacity that this current round of funding has given us, and given us that time and space to be able to really, really dig down deep into all of our schools and work together in a fantastic, long-term, well-thought-out way. But, we're coming into a position of finding funding again to continue the programme, and that will happen. But, the world is still struggling with the lack of resource that's out there. And so I think anything that enables us to do more in sharing the expertise that we've already built, and isn't just about, like we were saying, isn't just about one place like Attenborough Arts Centre being the hub of that, although, we've got a role to play in that, but yeah, about that community that builds around that idea, and that continued moving forward of that idea is really important. Did we...
I have a question about how this spreads further, because a day like today is glorious, thank you very much. But we are always singing to the choir, and one of the most difficult things is how you scale this sort of thing up. I would be really interested in a working party of teachers who have taken this back into their schools and enabled it to really get a lot of traction, because that's the generalisation, the utilisation of this sort of practice is a thing that's going to make a really big difference. And the joint practice idea I think is really fascinating in terms of how you give teachers back time, give your colleagues back time to be able to really develop their own learning. So I just wondered if anybody from the group had got some... I've just said I don't want a quick tip, because that seems the antithesis of what I'm asking for. But what has worked in your schools to spread this further? Because there is a courage needed in running an atelier that you can't sit in a 40-minute session and see somebody who's very happy and very confident do that and then go and do it yourself. So how do you really embed it? How do you make it work?
Anyone want to speak to that?
So we haven't tried this yet. Literally just discussed this today with Lauren. Where's Lauren? She's over there. We are putting, so at the moment we've got Sian in as our artists in residence, and to kind of maximise learning opportunities for our staff while Sian is in with her wonderful wealth of knowledge, delivering her creations that she is delivering with our class in primary. We are going to do an in-house exchange with TAs, so we're swapping in teaching assistants to kind of learn from Sian to then be able to understand how to adapt and incorporate that in their environments. So we kind of missed the boat with all of the other artists in residence that we had. We kind of wish that we did this a lot sooner or did this a while ago, but it's something that we're going to do moving forward now. So yeah, that's just one idea.
I want to answer what you said about scaling up. So we're now eight years into this process, and it all started with conversation with Abby and with Lisa over at Ellesmere, and to even imagine back then that we would be at this point now in a room with all of you and seeing the thousands of people that we've worked with, and I just could never have imagined that would have happened, and I'm so happy and proud that we've been able to do this. And we started off with a 2-year pilot, but we were able to evidence the impact. We were able to evidence the learning that was happening, using things like aspects of engagement, which is, it's part of the SEN Code of Practice for special schools. Mainstream settings could learn a lot from aspects of engagement. When you're looking at personalised learning and how to support children, it's a really, really good model. So it's how we can then think about culture and cultural learning as a human right, and how that can be used in the curriculum as well, has been so transformational. And then to get this second round, and then to now be ambitious for a third phase, I think we just have to keep the faith, keep the belief in that we know that this is working and that it's needed, and that without it, well, I can't imagine the world without us now.
I just wanted to say, I think one of the main things in getting a school to catch a wave, or get a county to catch a wave, or get a nation to catch a wave, it's kind of getting in at that teacher training point, getting the whole ideas of Reggio and co-creation of learning and everything embedded in initial teacher training. But it's also about leadership getting on board, because actually you can have the most passionate ECT on the planet, but if they're one lone voice that's done a little module on a course, and they come into a school where a leadership is very set on their agenda, and that agenda is not Reggio, they're going to have a real difficulty in flying with that. Similarly, if any practitioner goes into a setting where the leadership haven't caught the vision, you are going to find that very difficult to enact within a school. And so, I think it's coming in at the bottom and coming in at the top, and maybe we need to be pitching hard to leadership teams of multi-academy trusts and leadership teams of different schools, and speaking to those people that can actually say, do you know what, we're going to run with this, we are committed to this. Those people that have got the capacity to be able to change the direction of curriculum, to be able to change the direction of timetabling, you've got to pitch it at those people. And until those people catch the vision, that's where things are going to struggle. And I think part of the power of sort of SENsory Atelier and how it's been in our school and your school is that we are leadership, and we have got that voice. And so we've got to get out there to those coming in, those that are going to follow on after us, because we're not going to be around forever. So those that are coming in and those that are at the top at the minute, that's the people that we need to be hitting hard, I think.
I just wanted to echo kind of what Min had said, and I think before, when we did our projects, I kind of took it on board, and yes, management were involved, but it wasn't like it is now. And I think it was a blessing in disguise that I felt pregnant and couldn't go on the Reggio, and Min went instead, because actually it's done amazing things for our school, and Min's been able to then echo it throughout the school through management, and now we've got Jess as well, who's also. So I really do think the impact of having your SLT team and management on board, understanding it, the key thing is understanding it, and I think having them on board, it now knows we can go so far with it now because they understand it, and I think that's the key aspect, and just echoing what you said and seeing it firsthand at Netherhall, basically. So, yeah.
Thank you for falling pregnant when you did, Lauren.
I know, I was gutted.
Special shout out.
I was gutted. I did say
I need to go on a special trip now on my own.
Should we come to Michael next as we're
Briefly, just 2 moments of personal experience, actually. I realised that your first question, in a way, was the most difficult to answer because, and all of us with the best will in the world didn't quite answer it, because you actually said, what's it like to be learning, not what's it like to be teaching. And a lot of inevitably our expertise and our experience is around teaching. So I sat here thinking I was the dreadful, dreadful pupil, and the school had virtually rejected me by the age of 15. And then something happened, which was that I had good fortune. I encountered a good teacher, and the teacher was teaching me English. But what I found in the process of learning about English was that my opinion mattered. And that my opinion of the difference between a square and a rectangle was completely, irrelevant. It was just it was Joy's point about, is this Joy, I beg your pardon. Your point about questions rather than answers. And I've spent my life working with playwrights, and I've tried to persuade them that their job is not to provide answers, but to provoke the right questions. And suddenly I thought, oh my God, my opinion of Howard's End, or Great Expectations, or William Blake, or whoever, matters. I have an opinion, and I don't give a damn if it's not the opinion that everybody's telling me in textbooks. And that was somehow being praised, that I actually had an individual view. So I turned my life around, and English led to, theatre and all the rest of it. The other thing to say, which is sort of related to it, you mentioned the phrase artists in residence, and through an organisation called Artists in Residence, I've been an artist in residence in about 6 different schools. The last one was in an all-Asian school in Southall, which was an amazing experience. And the challenge that you guys have just been talking about, what you were particularly talking about just now, about shifting the timetables, shifting the priorities, and one of the surprises that they didn't quite expect was that what I was teaching, in inverted commas, and I put it in inverted commas, the kids about Othello, as is how I was doing Shakespeare, was that I was approaching the plays from the point of view of character rather than hypothetical, pre-decided ideas of criticism, of analysis, of this is the A-level answer to the theme of jealousy in Othello. I was looking at it from the point of view of Iago and Othello and Desdemona, and looking at it from a character point of view. At which point, judgment and ambiguity come. Judgment goes out the window, and ambiguity comes in. So that you have to embrace contradiction and paradox, because that's what the nature of a human personality is. And that's where art differs from science in broad terms, because there is no definition. My 2 anecdotes, in a way, are talking about the same subject, namely opinion, reaction, personal view, witness to the world. These are all things that are so embodied inside the arts, and it's certainly what set me alight as a student. And the world of education had given up on me, and I'd given up on the world of education, and everything suddenly turned around. And actually, one interesting thing that emerged out of show me up if I'm talking too long, but you will, I can see, is that when I'd done a couple of classes at one particular school, the school got and said, would you come back again? I said, yes, of course I would. I said, but not to talk to the pupils. We want you to come and talk to us. And all the English teachers sat around a table. There were more people even than you sat around your table. Said, tell us about how you direct a play. Tell us how you look at Othello. Tell us how you approach unlocking Shakespeare's work. And they found they were greedy. They were hungry for looking at the way in which they could transform the lives of their pupils in a different way of teaching. But the teaching had to embrace opinion, view, contradiction, paradox. And when we're when we're engaged in a rehearsal room, we are engaged, in my view, in the empathy business. And that's one of the things that art gives. You actually, somebody used the phrase earlier today, standing in other people's shoes. That's what actors do. They climb inside the skin of somebody else. So they teach. So racism breaks down. All kinds of things break down because you're taught to see the world through the eyes of somebody else. And that was a whole new way of looking at literature for them. But sorry, I'm dribbling on a bit. What I'm trying to tell you is that that's where I think art comes in strongly. And that's why I, as a 15-year-old, fell in love with learning again. Because suddenly what I was interpreting, what I was creating, what I was responding to mattered. I matter. Yeah. And by the way, it's not a contradiction of science. Acting is a perfect fusion of creativity and craft, which is an element of science.
Hello. So I've got a number of points, so I'll be quite quick. So I agree with Abby, spoke about this in the break, about going in bottom and top, and just remembering that those teachers training are going to be future leaders of, educational establishments. So opening up the possibilities that they can have at that level, I think is really important. Whether they get a chance to implement that at the setting they're in, but as long as they know that there are possibilities, other possibilities that they can do. So I completely agree with that. Coming back to your scaling up, I think our funders, or your funders, Paul Hamlyn, who are amazing, and Arts Council have got a huge role to play in how this project gets shared. Paul Hamlyn are very much about making a national change. They are an advisory group to the government, and so are the Arts Council. So it's about getting the advocacy for what you've done out there and to the right people and not giving up, constantly badgering them. They are responsible to you for giving you the money, and you are to them, but that's what they do. They advocate and they are there to make change. So this is a perfect opportunity to hold them to account, to do that for you.
Thank you, Lisa. I think, I'm hearing again, time and space, and that long-term view, and it takes a long time for change to happen, for things to really kind of come into play. Wonderful conversation, but this aspect of but what are we going to do about it? It's hanging over us all, isn't it? And I think that's a great shift for us into perhaps our closing. So first of all, I'd like to just acknowledge the expertise around the table with a little round of applause, if that's okay.